Welcome to the Teapot Reads. My name's Sam. I'm the Teapot. This is what I'm currently reading, and I'm so happy to see you today. Hello and welcome. Welcome back if you're a returning subscriber, and welcome if this is your first time here. Now, if this is your first time here, this is a spoiler video. This is going to be filled with spoilers, and if you don't want to see spoilers for Babel, which, happy birthday, Babel. I am putting this out the week it releases, so this is birthday week for Babel. I'm so happy it's out in the world. But if you don't want to see spoilers for this marvelous, amazing, fantastic book that everyone should definitely go read, check out my spoiler-free review, which I will link up here. I also have a spoiler-free vlog, which I will link at least down in the description, if not up here as well. Now, when I say spoilers, this is gonna be, it's still a review because I want to talk about these things in a reviewer fashion and give my thoughts on them, but it is a little bit more of a discussion, or at least opening up a discussion, because my review is this 5 stars. It's fantastic. And a lot of the elements that make it fantastic I talk about in my spoiler-free review. So even if you're here for the spoilers, I recommend that first if you want to get my full opinion on everything. Now, I trust that if you're watching this, it's because you want to. I've given you fair warning. You're either here or you're not. It's a book that even with spoilers, I feel like you can really enjoy. I recommend you go in without it because there are things that really get you, especially emotionally at the end of the book, that knowing about ahead of time, it just won't hit you as impactfully. But it's not a book that has a major plot twist at any point that is going to make you go oh my god, I wish I hadn't known that. I'm very much a believer that knowing spoilers about some things actually makes the experience of having that story even better. I know quite a few spoilers for quite a few book series that I'm interested in. I'm currently reading, as you saw, the Abound series, and I know a couple spoilers that happen later in the series. Nothing major, but I know enough that I know things about certain characters, so it's not going to surprise me when they're revealed. But it's also still really enjoyable to know that and be like, I see what you're doing there. But, to each their own. That's just my opinion on spoilers, but if you're here, it's because you want to be. All right. First off, I want to talk about the world building. So there's really not much spoilery about the world building. It's the really thing that I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit was the Hermes Society. So there's this moment kind of far in the book, actually. I think I turned to it. So it's here. You don't have a lot of book left at this point. When we finally get to see our main cast of characters ensconced with the Hermes Society and this other group that are sort of their own cohort and are a major aspect of the Hermes Society. And that was just the most perfect dark academia thing. I do wish there was more scenes like that brotherhood, that intellectual collaboration, the heart, the truth of the secret society. I wish that could have existed sooner in the book. I think that's really late in the game for the whole aesthetic to really slide into perfect place for me. This book, as much as it is targeted at a dark academia audience and is a dark academia book, I think doesn't have a lot of that secret society aspect where you get to really enjoy the secret society, in this case the Hermes Society, which is a shame, but I don't think it's a book that is working with it. I think it is doing something a little different than other dark academia books might be doing, but I just thought that was a perfect scene and a really great aesthetic, and really it was the high point of the aesthetic of this book for me. It's a shame it came late in the game, but I'm glad it was there. But the other thing world building that I thought was really just cool and interesting is almost a thought experiment. So at the end of the book, obviously Babel is destroyed, but the British government still exists, which I think is a really, really powerful, important statement about how revolutions work, and the fact that just taking away one source of power doesn't destroy a powerful organization or the colonizer. It doesn't. The same people are still in charge, and there are a lot of characters that make a lot of points about how what they're doing, it's not meaningless, but it's not the end. This is just hopefully a major turning point. And with any revolution, it's giving you a lot of food for thought on how revolutions work, how successful revolutions work. And the fact that revolutions tend to be really slow. Some of them are fast. Those are the really violent ones. Even if you're violent, but you don't want to just completely decimate, they have to be slow because it is a slow machine against an even slower machine. Empire colonization is not something that can easily be dismantled, and I like that the book acknowledges that. It's heartbreaking because when Babel falls, and also the destruction of the Hermes Society, or what we know the Hermes Society has happened at this point, when that happens, it is just heartbreaking. Absolutely hard to take in, but very accurate. Now, speaking of revolutions that work, I really think it's interesting that the only member of our group that ends up not only alive but a hero is Victoire, who comes from Haiti, which is one of the, actually might be the only instance of an enslaved population successfully rising up and destroying the colonizer. The Haitian Revolution is really interesting. It has been a long time since I've studied it, but I actually did study it in high school, which surprises me looking back, and might surprise you, but it's a really interesting and amazing revolution to learn about, because, you know, everyone in America learns about the American Revolution, and we did American Revolution, French Revolution, and then we did the Haitian Revolution. And the Haitian Revolution is one of the most successful revolutions. You know, people don't talk about that victory. And I love that Victoire, a character who comes from a background from a country where they successfully revolted against the colonizers and took the country for themselves, for the actual people of the country, being a part of this new revolution against the British colonizers in, you know, in the heart of England, being a babbler, being a part of Babel falling, even though she wasn't there at the very end. And she lives. I love that. I'm even now getting like goosebumps. It is just this beautifully poetic and wonderful thing. And the fact that she lives, and that is seen as not only a strong decision, but a hard, difficult decision, I loved. Those moments at the, I'm getting a little teary, those moments at the end, you know, Robin can't move forward. It's over for him. Even if he lived, he can't move forward. Victoire, even though she's been through like everything Robin has, she can move forward. She's a strong enough person to keep going. And I love that. And I love that it was her. I love that it was a Black woman. I think it being her was really important. I think they're cutting down a tree, so I hope that noise is not distracting. I talked in the spoiler-free review about how, even though it is a novel and should be taken as a story and a novel, it is definitely a book that is doing more than just being a novel. It's not necessarily a moralizing tale, but you can't read this book and say decisions were made just willy-nilly because the author wanted it. R.F. Kuang is making very specific decisions about who her characters are, where they come from, and who they are, and what they look like. Those decisions have been made, and they're very purposeful. Most so, I think, in Letty and Victoire. Letty is a white woman from a privileged background. Her father is rich, but she has experienced abuse, and she has experienced difficulties, not just against women in general at this time, but against her specifically. Like I said, she's suffered abuse. She has a really fraught relationship with her father, with her family, and her brother and her were really close, and her brother died. He killed himself, if I'm remembering correctly. And she's not, I mean, she's had a privileged life, so she's never needed to want for anything, but she hasn't had an easy life. And that's important, because the book is not telling us to hate Letty because of where she comes from. In fact, I would argue the book is at no point telling us to hate Letty. It is just framing her as a sympathetic, pitiable character that I'm fairly certain R.F. Kuang knows a lot of readers, especially a lot of influential readers, will look at and see themselves in, because she is a white woman. And that is the very archetype of character that is either going to be the hero in most fantasy stories, or is going to be the sympathetic, easy to understand the plight of others savior. Not hero, but like savior, like white savior. We're talking Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side. I like that film for nostalgic reasons, okay? there's a lot of issues in that film. Or The Help. Emma Stone in The Help. You know, the white woman is the savior character in a lot of narratives. And Letty is 100% set up to be that character. All of her friends are minorities and are treated like crap. And she is understanding as best as she can. She's really not putting in an effort. I mean, she is, but she's not. She never really looks objectively or really is able to look past empire and the privileges of the UK, of Great Britain. And she brings this up to characters, and it is something that the characters do, especially Robin, have to deal with, the fact that they did benefit from the privileges of their position. But Letty is set up to be a very familiar trope. And even myself reading it, I wanted Letty to end up being one of the good guys. I wanted her, if not necessarily to be like the white savior type character, because I'm not interested in that, but I wanted her to be a good guy. I wanted her to stay on their side. I wanted her to come to an understanding. And obviously she doesn't. I think there's one scene that is really telling when she's being confronted with everything, with the Hermes Society, with the way her friends, her closest heartmates have been treated by this country, by her homeland, by this place they call home. And she cries. And she's very upset, which is, I think, a very fair and reasonable reaction. You know, you've got to emote. And the book doesn't vilify this. I think that the novel understands, you know, it is in part just like emoting. But it also brings up the fact that they've just told her all the things they've suffered and dealt with. And she's the one who needs comforting. Letty, being confronted with what they actually dealt with, needs the comfort. It was a big moment. And it made me personally check my own privilege, I guess, but also just my own reality. And it also made me really double think on a lot of stories and a lot of familiar characters and a lot of just characters with not necessarily the white savior trope, but with the trope of they're being told something horrible and they need the comforting. It was this really big moment, and I think it's a really telling moment for Letty in general. She is a self-centered character because she's lived in a world where she, in many ways, is the center. And when she hasn't been the center, she has fought to make herself a bigger figure than she is. And she is, even till the end of this book, fighting to be a hero. And she definitely, I think, sees herself as a hero. There were some missteps with her. You know, she's depicted as being very, like, hound-like. Like, she will chase something till the end, which is why Victoire, when she leaves, like, Letty has to think Victoire is dead. Or she will find Victoire. I get it. I do get it. I just feel like at the beginning, she's not depicted that way strongly enough for me to 100% believe it. I feel like I needed just an extra push somewhere across the novel to make me really think, okay, yeah, Letty will literally chase her down. I just didn't see that as being necessarily realistic for the ways the novel was telling us it would happen. Letty is definitely an unforgivable character, I think, in a lot of ways. She's a very pitiable character. She's very easy to pity, and to a degree also very easy to sympathize with, because like I said, she hasn't had an easy life. But the moment when she turns on her friends is unforgivable, absolutely, and 100%. And, you know, my heart broke because of it, not like for Letty, but also not for Letty, like for Robin, for Victoire, for Rami, obviously for Rami. My heart just kind of collapsed a little bit in those moments. And she definitely needed to be an unforgivable character. She couldn't stay just pitiable. She couldn't just stay poor Letty. She had to take that decision and she had to do something with it. Because ultimately, the white savior character is not playing that role because they want to save people. They're playing that role because they think they're doing the right thing, and she decided they weren't doing the right thing. So she had to do the right thing in her eyes, which just broke my heart. I've already talked about Victoire a lot and how happy I am that she lived. I think it is not only unexpected to some degree, but also just really wonderful that if one of them's going to live, it's going to be her. We see a lot, especially in YA fantasy, the black character, the black woman dies. Now, I'm not going to use specific examples because that's spoilers for other series and you may not have signed up for that when you signed up for this video, but it happens a lot, particularly in a couple really popular YA fantasy series and other fantasy series and other books in general. The black woman doesn't often leave the book as a hero unless she's being written as either the main character or like the love interest. You know, the side character, she doesn't often make it. And this doesn't just exist in books. This exists kind of across the board. So I just think it's lovely on so many levels that Victoire is the one to make it, and that she has the world in front of her. She has a really unique experience, and hopefully, and I would like to believe that she does make a huge difference continuing to move forward in the world of the Book of Babel. One other character thing I want to talk about real quick is the sort of lack of romance. Like, there is romance there. This is disappointing on like a personal level because I like when there's a decent romantic subplot. I don't necessarily want it to take up a lot of page space, but this book really didn't have it. I think it kind of does it on purpose. There's a lot of tension between the characters, and they bring up a lot of times that the four of them really are the closest to each other of like anyone, right? And in a lot of ways there isn't really space for romance between any of them. Letty tries with Rami, and I like that doesn't work. And one of the reasons it doesn't work is because there's a lot of romantic tension between Rami and Robin, which obviously does not come to fruition. You can very easily read between the lines and see it there, though. I caught it like immediately, and I was like, am I seeing this? Am I double seeing it? And then Rami died, and I said, oh no, I saw that correctly. However, it couldn't. It was never be allowed to be fulfilled because Rami had to die. This is kind of me coming at it from a craft standpoint real quick, but one of the characters had to die. It's a huge piece of momentum for the story moving forward for the characters, and also the story that's being told is being set up. These characters cannot be suffered to live by the world in which they live. It had to be Rami. You know, Letty was the bad guy, Robin was the protagonist, Victoire had to live. Rami had to die. And it is so much more emotionally impactful if there was no fulfilled relationship there. The reader is left not just with the death of a character they've come to love, but the death of potential in such a clear way. The best character deaths, by which I mean the most successfully written ones, are the ones that leave the reader thinking, but there was more to his story. There was more to that story, because it breaks your heart. So Rami had to die, and he and Robin would never, in any universe where this is as good a book as it is, be allowed to be together, because that potential had to die as well for it to be just such a absolutely heart-wrenching death. And yes, it was heart-wrenching, and I felt it through the rest of the book, and it hurt so bad. And even thinking about it now, I'm like, oh my god. And the ending of the book, all those character deaths, even the ones that we had only really just gotten to know, I still am getting really, really emotional about it, because again, all those characters had potential. They were people, you know, they didn't feel like they were being written to die, but of course they had to die. Anyway, it was just really good. Character deaths in this book, A+. The ending of the book, besides being emotional, and besides being really emblematic of the fact that empire, that revolution, needs to completely disable and destroy all the powers in charge. I think that is a difficult pill to swallow. And not to center myself on the narrative of this book at all, because it's not really meant to, but, you know, modern day, there are a lot of problems. I'm not saying burn anything to the ground, but you know, the tension in the world politically, you know, worldwide, but also just located in the US has been so intense. And in a lot of ways, it almost feels like there is like some sort of revolution brewing. And it just makes you think, you know, successful revolution looks one way. I don't know. I guess like big ideas. I feel like it's a novel that comes at a good time because it's gonna make you stop and think and just not to be like a doomsday person, but you know, maybe, right? Maybe things can only last miserably for so long before people start reacting, and I don't know. But the ending, the messaging in the ending, the fact that successful revolution is not only difficult but probably impossible in most scenarios because of the absolute manpower that's needed. I don't want to say I liked that necessarily, but it was just one of the most deep endings, especially for a fantasy novel, that I've ever read. This is a book that is ripe for discussion and will probably be a talking point for a lot of people for a long time to come. I really recommend you read it. I really recommend you read it. I think at some point I would like to, probably within the next 2 or 3 years, go through it again and just make an even deeper discussion and just talk about it some more, because there's just so much going on and it is so wonderful and it is so timely and also timeless. It is a classic in pretty much every sense of the word. And yeah, 5 stars. I still strongly stand by that. I hope that if you read it, you really enjoyed it. And I hope that if you haven't read it, maybe this has convinced you to read it. You know, it's good. It's really good. It's not a novel, like I said in my spoiler-free review, it's not a novel that I feel like people need to read right away, but it is a novel that I feel like people need to read. Alright, so that's it from me. If you liked this content and you want to see more like it, definitely subscribe. I'm working on putting out more reviews. It is something that is really a weak spot, but I do enjoy doing them. I also have like a pile of arcs that I just am dragging my feet getting to. So I'm trying, I think, in the back half of this year to really read a bunch of those arcs and do reviews for each of them. Unless I have nothing to say, which seems unlikely. But if you are already a subscriber, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. It means the world to me. And thank you for everyone for putting up with the noise of them. I'm pretty sure they're cutting down a tree. It's the village is doing something with trees if it's not cutting it down. If you are somewhere cold, I hope you're staying warm. And if you're somewhere warm, I hope you're staying comfortable. Most of all, I hope you're reading a great book. I will see you guys later. Bye!